The big problem that we face is that most of us that are fasting are slowly erasing the benefits of fasting as time goes on. And now there's new research to really highlight what's going on and why this is happening. Now, we have to understand first that fasting feels good. We get kind of addicted to it. We enjoy it. We lose weight from it. But we also have to realize that fasting is something that is very, very powerful. And I want you to think of fasting like white noise. Now, I've used this analogy with insulin resistance before, but with fasting, it's very important too. Okay, let's say that you're fasting and you're getting all this success from it. That's very similar to you like turning on a fan in your room and you hear that fan because you just turned it on. Just like the benefits of fasting are happening because you just started fasting. Then a couple hours go by and you don't really hear that fan anymore. 2 days later, that fan's still running and it's practically like the fan is non-existent. It was never there to begin with. Then all of a sudden, someone comes into the room and turns off the fan. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, that's weird. It's like really silent in here now. Because that fan was on for so long, you were adjusted to it until someone turned it off. You don't really realize what you had till it's gone, right? Now with fasting, your body acclimates to the caloric restriction that happens with fasting. And what happens with this is eventually your body doesn't even realize it's doing anything. You're still getting some benefits. You're still getting the benefits of not eating as much, the benefits of having breaks from food. Don't get me wrong, there are still benefits. But are you wasting your time and energy? Now, when we look at research that was published a little ways back, but still new enough to be relevant in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, they took a look at subjects that overate for 1 week. Okay, they had them overeat, just caloric surplus. And then they had them go through a caloric restriction phase for 3 weeks. They had them eat 50% of their normal caloric intake. And then after that 3-week period, they had them do a refeed for 2 weeks. What they found is that during the caloric restriction phase, they lost weight, but they also lost 5% of their muscle mass. In 3 weeks? What the heck? Okay, but they also found that there was a 266 calorie reduction in their daily energy expenditure. What that means is that at rest, they were burning 266 less calories than they were 3 weeks earlier. That's 266 calories just not doing anything that your body slows down burning. Now, 48% of this had to do with what is called adaptive thermogenesis, meaning the body had adapted to a lesser caloric intake, and it adapted that fast. Now, what does this have to do with fasting? Most of us that are fasting a little too much. We're fasting so much that when we do fast, it's nothing really shocking to the body. We have essentially put ourselves into caloric restriction. And we have to remember that there are benefits of fasting independent of caloric restriction. And I know people will try to fight me on this, but show me the research that shows that intermittent fasting and fasting does not have benefits outside of caloric restriction. There are multiple studies that are eucaloric, matched for calories, that show that when we are fasting and eating the same amount of calories as not fasting, there are different benefits. Not saying better or worse, but different benefits with fasting than there are with just caloric restriction. But if we fast every day, we are putting ourselves in caloric restriction mode. Unless you are really keeping a tally and counting your calories and making sure you're eating enough during every single eating period. Now, what I suggest you do by utilizing this knowledge and utilizing what I'm saying here and putting it into practical application is find a frequency of fasting that works best for you and identify how you can still feel the fast. And I'll talk about what that feels like in just a second here. What you do want to do, no matter what, is during your eating period, you should try to get calories in a healthy way. Too many people fast and then eat like a bird during their eating window. Intermittent fasting is about restricting time. It's not about restricting food, okay? Ultimately, you do restrict food through that time that you're not eating. That's no-brainer, but the goal is to restrict the time that you're eating, not the food that you're eating. So when you are in your eating period, a concerted effort to eat healthy, nutritious, calorically dense foods, okay? Avocados, nice cuts of meat that are calorically dense, things like salmon that's calorically dense, avocados, maybe some healthy nuts now and then. Fish, again, more fish that's like fatty and has these calories in it, okay? Good healthy aged cheeses, maybe some raw milk, maybe raw cheeses, maybe goat cheese, things that have these calories, right? Okay, occasional nuts. I popped a link down below for House of Macadamia, by the way. I'm a huge macadamia nut fan. A very caloric nut, not one that you want to be eating like in the bucket load, but one that you definitely want to be adding in during your eating window. I don't think a day goes by with intermittent fasting where I don't at least have 1 or 2 macadamia nuts. Usually I'm having a couple ounces of them. So I popped a link down below for House of Macadamia if you want to try some amazing macadamia nuts. They're harvested in South Africa and then they are packaged less than an hour's drive from where they are grown and harvested. So supporting all the local farmers down there in South Africa. And fun fact, a majority of the macadamia nuts come from South Africa, not from some of the islands that we're told they come from. The bulk of them are harvested in South Africa, and House of Macadamia is right there at the epicenter. So I popped the link down below, saves you 20% off whatever you want to get from them, whether it's straight up macadamia nuts, macadamia nut oil to drizzle on your meat and your veggies or whatever, okay, or you can try their macadamia nut bars that are sugar-free, where the first ingredient is macadamia nuts, and chocolate-covered, white chocolate-covered, sugar-free macadamia nuts. So again, that link down below using code Thomas20 saves you 20%. Plus, with any purchase using that link, a free 20-ounce bottle of cold-pressed macadamia nut oil. Literally the only cold-pressed macadamia nut oil that I know of that's on the market. And you're getting one completely free if you just use that link down below. There's no catches, it's just to get the word out there. So how do you identify that your fasting is still having an effect? Well, it's easier to point out how to know when you're not having an effect. If fasting becomes very, very easy for you, that's not always a good thing. I've been fasting now for, let's see, like 2009-ish, 2010-ish really, so I guess 13 years at the time of this video. Okay, now with that, fasting is still difficult on the days that I fast. That makes it sound like I'm a bad faster, right? Oh, Thomas isn't good at fasting because it's still somewhat difficult. When I say difficult, it's not like I'm starving, dying for food, running to the fridge, doing crazy things. No, no, no. It means I still struggle. I still have some cravings. I still feel a little bit hungry. Why? Because I make sure that I'm not fasting so much that I'm adapted to fasting as my normal rule. I go days without fasting and then I'll randomly fast, generally averaging to about 2 or 3 days per week. And if I start feeling like the effects of fasting are kind of like going away and I'm not getting that hungry and I'm not getting the mental benefit as much anymore, then I know maybe it's time for me to take a little time off. But generally speaking, I keep my calories quite high on the days that I'm not fasting because I know that on the days that I fast, even with a concerted effort to get adequate calories in during my eating period, there's a good chance I won't get exactly what I need. Because if I'm fasting 20 hours and I only have a few hours to eat, and I still want to maintain enough time before bed, like with no food and things like that, there's just no way in a healthy way that I'm going to be able to stuff the 3,000 calories or so that I need in that couple hours. At least not when I know that I'm not going to assimilate all of that in that amount of time. So I know that. So that means on the days I'm not fasting, I intentionally overeat by a small amount. Not like gorging myself, but maybe a 5% surplus, 10% surplus, because I know the days that I fast, I might be in a 30 or 40% deficit. That sounds like a lot of work, right? It's not, because there's something called intuitive fasting, okay? Now, Dr. Will Cole, a good friend of mine, has talked about this a lot. Intuitive fasting is just that. It's listening to your body and understanding when it's time to fast. It also gives you a very nice peace with it. You understand that, you know what, I don't have to be a slave to this fasting. I don't have to feel like I have to fast. I don't have to be weirdo, like not having breakfast with my friends if they really want to go out to breakfast and I'm just sitting there with my glass of lemon water. Sure, on one hand that makes you look disciplined, but on the other hand, are you missing out on some of life's beautiful things? So the nice thing with sort of intuitive fasting and listening to your body and occasionally randomly fasting is you can enjoy those things knowing that, you know what, tomorrow is going to be a day where I aggressively fast. But it's not just good for the brain. You're getting longevity out of your fasting. You're still getting all the benefits because fasting is about restricting time, not calories. I'll see you tomorrow.